Before we start this video, a large thank you to Tim, Malik, Yasin, Draken, Van, East Artist, Ryu Gashik, Matthew, Camilla, Bastien, Ryan, Oraset, Agizrael, Bandar, Zisco, Tom, Matthew, and Abyssips for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video. Hello guys, and today we're going to add grappling to our zombie character so we can grab onto our player and do some damage in the future when we enable our damage system. So first, I'm going to go into the animator window and I'm just going to change the names of quick turn, pistol reload, and pistol shoot to give them an underscore and 01 just to keep the naming conventions the same throughout the project. You don't need to do this, and if you do, please keep in mind you also have to change this in the script as well. And then right after that, I'm actually going to drag in the animations I have for this. Now these animations will be available on our asset store page in the near future, but right now the package is not done yet. But as you can see here, I have a zombie walk, a grapple for the zombie, and a grapple for the victim. So the idea here is that the zombie's going to grab the character and it's going to lock them into this animation. And in the future, we can make it so the character can break the animation early or not and take the full damage. But for now, we're just going to make it so the player is locked into the animation and they will take damage as soon as we create our damage system. So I'm going to drag in the zombie's animation for grapple and return it to the empty state. And then the players, if you have animations here, that's great. Or if you have placeholder animations, any kind of grab animation will work. There are a bunch on the asset store. And we will have ours up as soon as we can, which will include a lot of attack and damage animations and so on and so on. But I digress. So after dragging this in here, let's give you a preview. This is a zombie's grab animation. You can see they grab the victim, they try to take a bite out of them, and they get pushed away. Likewise, this is the players where they get grabbed and they just push the zombie off and kind of stumble backwards. So if we go into the game here now, I'm going to open up the animation window with the zombie highlighted. And then I'm going to go open up the lunge attack that we have. And as you can see right now, this right here is where we want to enable a grab. And this is where we want to close it. So at any point, if the zombie touches you between these 2 points, we want to initiate a grab sequence. So let's add a new component called a zombie combat manager script to our zombie. And this is going to handle most things combat oriented, whether it be turning on and off settings or basically enabling or disabling certain colliders, etc., etc. So I'm going to start by making a public void called open grapple colliders. Okay? And then I'm going to make another public void called close grapple colliders. And what are grapple colliders? Well, this is just going to be a way we detect if something is touching the hands of our zombie when they are in a mid-attack sequence or a mid-lunge sequence. So I'm going to put some pseudo code here. We want to open the collider, or colliders for the left and right hand. And when or if the collider contacts the player, we have to do some stuff. I'm just going to say when/if because obviously you can dodge this as well or not get hit by it. When if the collider contacts the player is locked into a grapple animation, and also the zombie is also locked into a grapple animation. And we want to also rotate the zombie so it's facing the player, and the player so it's facing the zombie. Now in the future we can add it so if the zombie grapples onto the character and they're back on, then this will make it so you can't break free and this will always do damage. I think this is how Resident Evil handles it. But if you guys are facing one another, if you have some kind of defense weapon or item, you can break free. So let's add pseudocode here for right hand grapple collider and the left hand grapple collider because we need these as objects to activate. And then the awake method, we're not going to do anything right now. I'm just going to put that there. And I'm actually not going to, let's call let's wait and call that actually the zombie manager. We don't need that right this second, so we'll do one thing at a time. Now I'm going to minimize this and go back into the game, and let's go to our zombie model, and let's find the hands on the root transform. Now whatever you put on the root of the hands on most models, it's going to follow the hands when the zombie animates. But this means, so like if I put a collider on this, the collider is going to basically move with the hand when the zombie moves in the game, which is what we want. So I'm going to find a nice position here under the shoulder, elbow, hand, and that looks good. I'm probably going to use the finger because I think that's right in the center of the hand. Yes, it is. So I'm going to make an empty game object under the finger on the hand of the left and the finger on the hand of the right. And then I'm just going to rename it to left or right hand grapple collider. Then I'm going to drag it out from under the finger and parent to under the hand so it's easier to see. You don't need to do that. I'm going to unpack this prefab so I can do that. But I just want to have it under the hand so it's very clear to see. Okay. And then when I'm done that, let's just copy or alternatively just do the exact same thing. So come in here on finger, create empty, call this right hand grapple collider, and then drag it out under the hand. So what do we need on this grapple collider? Well, we need a collider of sorts. Otherwise, we won't be able to tell when something touches the collider. So let's add a sphere collider. And let's make it the size you want. Let's turn on gizmo so we can see it. Make sure it's a trigger. And I'm going to make it 0.22, and there you go. There's that circle right there. So if the player is inside that circle, this will activate our logic. Going to copy the component and paste it on the right-hand grapple collider. This is very important that you say it is a trigger. Make sure you check that off. Otherwise, you'll have it colliding with stuff, and you'll get a lot of weird behavior. So make sure you check is trigger. Now let's add a script to both of these called zombie grapple collider, okay? And this is where we're actually going to run the bulk of the logic. We're going to open and close these colliders on the zombie combat manager script, but for actually handling locking our characters into animations, we're going to use this script here. So start off by defining a variable of type collider, call that grapple collider. And then on awake, I'm going to say grapple collider equals get component collider. And then I'm going to come back over here on the zombie combat manager, and then I'm going to make a serializable field and a variable of type zombie grapple collider, which is the new script we just made, and I'm going to call it right-handed collider. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the left-handed collider. Now, you could just drag these into the inspector because we're using serialized field, which is totally fine. But if you want to automate it, if you don't want to keep dragging these in because you're making a bunch of different zombies, etc., if you'd like to automate the process, I can show you how to do that as well. So what we're going to do is go back over to the zombie grapple collider script. I'm going to make a bool variable, make sure it is public because we need to access it from this other script. I'm going to call this is right-handed grapple collider. Now, zombies typically only have two hands, so what we're going to do is we're going to check to see if it's right-handed, and if it is, we're going to assign it the right hand, and if not, it must be left-handed, so we assign the left hand. So let's make a function called private void load grapple colliders. And what we're going to do is we're going to declare an array in here of type zombie grapple colliders. And then we're going to say that this array is equal to get components in children. And we're going to look for all the zombie grapple colliders that might be parented under this game object, which in our case is only 2. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make a for each loop here. And we're going to say for each grapple collider inside the array of total grapple colliders, which in our case again should only be 2. We're going to say if grapple collider dot is right hand grapple collider, then we're going to assign that to our right hand grapple collider variable up there, and else it must be the left hand grapple collider, so we'll assign it to the left hand grapple collider variable. Now, in the event that you have more than 2 hands, you can use an enum instead if you want, and set up enums much like we do for our ammo, and have one for right hand, left hand, third hand, whatever name you want to give it. Just do it that way. Make sure you say components and children. Otherwise, you'll get an error. And then on awake, call load grapple colliders. Now, make sure you have attached the script to both hands, and make sure that you are checking the box for is right-handed grapple collider on the right hand. Otherwise, you will get some problems. So I'm just going to attach the script here to the left hand. And now if I were to hit play, you can see here that both fill up. The right hand goes to the right-hand slot, and the left hand goes to the left-hand slot. Perfect. Now we can remove the serializable field because we don't need to see it in the inspector. We know it works. And we don't need to access it anywhere else right now, so it does not need to be public. Now, let's go to where we open the collider, and all we will say is right-handed grapple collider dot grapple collider dot enabled equals true. And this references the sphere collider on our right hand and the collider variable on the right-handed grapple collider script. Do the same thing down here, except set it to false. And then do the same thing for the left hand. Set it to true on the open grapple colliders and set it to false on the closed grapple colliders. And then we're going to erase our pseudocode down there because as for the closed grapple colliders, we're basically all done there. And we're going to do the rest of this logic now over on the zombie grapple collider script itself. But before we do that, I'm just going to show you to make it clear. So the grapple collider variable right here on the zombie grapple collider script is a direct reference to the collider that's on this game object. So it is the sphere collider. So basically, when we're referencing this, we're just enabling this like this. On and off. So start with it disabled, so make sure you uncheck that little check mark on the sphere colliders. And then we're going to enable it through animation events. Otherwise, it'll always be on. So now let's make an onTriggerEnter function, which calls when another collider enters the trigger of our collider. In our case, it's our grapple collider. And we're going to say if other.gameObject.layer is equal to layer mask.nameToLayer player, then we want to do some logic. We know that if we pass this check, then this has to be our player because the only thing we're giving the layer player to is our player character. So I'm going to put a line of comment here and say, if we grab a collider on the player layer, we proceed. Just to make it very clear what's happening. And then down here, we pass the first check. We want to search for a player manager variable. I'm just going to call it player. And we're going to say equals other.getComponent player manager. And other being the other collider that collides with us on the player layer. So just to show you, if we go to our character hunk, you can see the layer that I have him on as player, and he has a capsule collider. So, and if I go over here to the layer, you can see right there, number 6, it's player. So if that capsule collider comes in contact with the sphere colliders, then we're going to search for the variable player manager. And then we're going to say if the player is not performing an action, meaning they're not doing something right now that's locking them in an action, because we don't want to interrupt that if it's important, then we're going to proceed further. But first, we're also going to say if player does not equal null, meaning if for some reason we're unable to find the player manager, we're not going to continue. But that should not be the case. So I'm going to say here a little line of comment rather. If the player is not already performing an action, we proceed. And this could mean maybe they're already locked in a grab by another zombie or something like that. So we don't want to interrupt that. Then I'm going to say zombie. Oh, I have to add that up here. Let's make a variable of type zombie manager called zombie. And then on awake, let's say zombie equals getComponent in parent, because again, this is on the grapple collider on his hand, and the zombie manager is on the main game object. So I'm going to say zombie.zombie animator manager. We're going to say dot, and I want to make another function for this. I know we have 2 already, and they're identical right now, but they're going to change in the future. I just want to make one for grabs as well, just in case we have any special logic in the future with grappling, and I'm sure we will. So over here, and feel free to use one of these other functions if you want. I'm just going to make another void called play grapple animation. And depending on what kind of grapple animation you're using, you might not want to use root motion, or you might want to use it. In my case, I'm going to, but I'll give you an option not to. So I'm going to add a string for grapple animation. And then I'm going to add a comma here, put a bool for use root motion. And then inside this function, I'm going to simply say zombie manager dot animator dot apply root motion is equal to the use root motion bool. So whatever you put that as, it will decide whether we use root motion for this animation. And then zombie manager dot is performing action is equal to true. And then zombie manager dot animator dot crossfader animation, grapple animation over 0.2f, and we are good to go. Okay. Now in the future, if you want to change grapple specifically, the animation logic, we can change it from this function. Going to rename that to zombie instead of zombie manager just to keep the naming conventions the same. If you watch my other series, you know how I am with that. So next we're going to say play grapple animation, and I have this hard coded right now because we only have the 1, but in the future we can make this so it's dependent on the creature itself. But for now, I'm just going to stick in this, which is zombie underscore grapple underscore 01 for me, and true because I want to use root motion. So whatever you have there, just stick that in for the animation. And next I'm going to say zombie.animator.setFloat vertical to 0, and this just stops any walking movement because, as you know, we handle walking with our zombie by turning the vertical variable up on the animator, which changes the animation state from walking to, or idle to walking, sorry. So I'm just going to say play the zombie's grapple animation and freeze their movement at 0. And actually, that's not a really good way to say that, so I'm just going to say and freeze their, or maybe even stop their walking movement. So, and set their walking movement at 0. That's better. So then we're going to say player.animator manager, and I'm going to rename this because that's also bothering me. I'm going to rename animator manager to player animator manager because we have zombie animator manager. I just want to keep this very consistent. This seems too neutral, but it's specifically for the player, so let's keep it as that. All right, and now back over here, I'm just going to say player animator manager dot play animation, and we're going to play the player's version of this animation, which in my case is player underscore grapple underscore 01, and I'm going to set it to true because we are using root motion for this animation as well. All right, next let's make them rotate each other. This is very important too. I'm just going to put a comment here though. Play the player's grapple animation. And then down below here, let's set up 2 quaternion variables. So quaternion target zombie rotation, we'll do that one first, is going to equal quaternion.look rotation, and we're going to say our player.transform. Whoops, did not mean to press enter there. Transform.position minus our zombie manager, so our zombie.transform.position. Make sure you're referencing that and not the position of the zombie grapple collider. And then we're going to say zombie.transform.rotation is equal to target zombie rotation. And again, make sure you're using the zombie transform and not the transform of the zombie grapple collider because that's on the zombie's hand. And then we're going to say quaternion target player rotation is equal to quaternion.lookRotation, zombie.transform.position minus player.transform.position, and then we're going to say player.transform.position is equal to target player rotation. And that should have both of our characters facing one another very suddenly and abruptly, but it definitely does the job. So I'm just going to add a comment here so we know what this does. We're going to say makes the zombie face its victim, or its target rather, and then we're going to say makes the target face the zombie. You can replace the word target with player. It's all the same as long as you know what's going on from the comments. And now a future to-do list, I'm just going to say play a different grab depending on the angle of the player or target in respect to the zombie. So if we grab the player and they're facing away from us, so if we get up from behind, there's no chance of breaking that, and we'll play a different grab animation. And I'm going to put an example here. If the zombie is behind the player, allow the zombie to grab the player from behind instead of rotating the player to face him. And then we're going to say rotate smoothly in the future. So we'll run this over a couple frames, and then we'll make the rotation kind of click together more smoothly. But that's a polish element, and it's not too important right now. So I'm just going to keep this here for future to do. And we'll come back when we have more animations, and we'll put all this in. But this right now is the working framework, and this should be fine. So I'm going to go to the animation window again. I'm going to bring up our nice lunge animation. So this is how we're going to, basically, if you get caught at any point during this lunge, that's when the grab's going to initiate. So add an animation event here, whenever you want it to. I'm going to say open Grapple Collider. And then right when you want it to end, close Grapple Collider. And if we get grabbed at any point during these two animation events, we will get locked in the grab. And again, guys, if you want to get these animations, they will be up, I promise. As soon as the pack is completed, it will include a bunch of attacks, death animations, damage animations for the zombie and the player. So now if I walk over in front of our zombie here now, you will see, there you go, he grabs me and he tries to take a bite, and we break out of it, and I'm just going to run away now. So that's awesome, but you can see also, if I look at this guy, he's actually not able to rotate when he does the lunge. So watch this, he kind of just only goes straight. Now that's actually what a lot of zombies do in Resident Evil, but I think a couple of them have the ability to turn over a certain period of time, so I'm going to show you guys how to do that. We're going to make it so this guy can turn. So right now you can see if we are performing an action right here, we actually don't get to run the logic for rotate towards target right here because it returns before. I'm going to delete this debug.log. But here's rotate towards target. And furthermore, this rotates with the nav mesh. And zombies don't really think about obstacles and pathfinding when they're lunging at somebody. They kind of just jump at them. So if we have a nav mesh rotation, it won't be as authentic. We want the zombie to just come blindly at the player no matter what. So let's go to the zombie manager and add a bool for can rotate, okay? I'm actually going to put this under flags, not locomotion, because it is a flag. It dictates whether the zombie is able to do this. So let's save that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to the zombie and go to the animator window, and back on the empty state, every time we come back here and we're done an animation, we want to reset it so our zombie can rotate. So let's open this up and say zombie.canRotate is equal to true. No matter what, when we're done in an action, we want to give our zombie the ability to rotate again. That's important. That's paramount. And then down here under the rotate towards target, we're actually going to do a lot that's similar here, but we're going to do a couple things that's different. So we're not going to use the nav mesh agent because, again, we want that authentic blind lunge at a player. We're going to do a private void rotate towards target while attacking or whilst attacking. And you can call that whatever you want, but I'm only going to use it for attacks, so that's why I'm calling it that. And I'm going to make a comment here to further clarify. This rotation method uses a nav mesh agent, and I'm going to say this rotation method just rotates towards the player. Or I'll say will blindly rotate towards the target. And that's more zombie-like. And you can even say ignoring collisions or collision checks or whatever you want. And I'm just going to say, that's very clear enough. Actually, we'll stop there. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to pass the zombie manager because we need some data. We have to know the current target's position. And I'm going to say if zombie manager can rotate up here, I'm going to put in this code. So we're not going to run the regular rotation code if we can't rotate either. So in the future, if you want to disable rotation, just uncheck that bool. And then we're going to say if zombie manager.can rotate, same as above, we're going to start it this way. And then we're also going to say, and if zombie manager is performing an action, that will be indicative of we are attacking, because if we're performing an action, it usually means we're doing some kind of attack or lunge. I'll say vector3 direction is equal to zombie manager dot current target dot transform dot position. And I messed up there. I just said transform dot position. So I'm going to say current target dot transform dot position minus the zombie manager dot transform dot position. Okay, next we're going to simply say direction.y is equal to 0. We don't want any movement on the y. And then we're going to say direction.normalize. And then right below that, we are going to apply it over time. So we'll say if direction is equal to vector 3.0, let's check that first too. We'll just say the direction is equal to zombie manager .transform.forward, because that means you're just already looking the correct way. And that's fine. And then we'll say down here, quaternion dot, or target rotation, quaternion target rotation equals quaternion dot look rotation direction. And then we'll do a zombie manager dot transform dot rotate equals dot rotation, not rotate, equals quaternion dot slurp. And then we're going to slurp our current rotation to the new target rotation over our rotation speed times time dot delta time. Okay, and that looks good. So now this should be working fine. And we're going to pass that. Yeah, make sure you're passing it with the rotation speed so you can tweak it in the inspector as you want. And now let's call this function up here right where we're saying if we are performing an action, let's say rotate whilst attacking. And I'm actually going to pass the zombie manager to that function, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to erase the is performing action check because we have it right here. So we don't need it in two places. So let's just go ahead and just delete this here. No need in putting it there twice. All right, let's save that. And now we need to make two functions to enable and disable the can rotate bool. So quite simply on the zombie combat manager, let's make a public void enable rotation during attack, and then a public void disable rotation during attack. Again, I'm calling it during attack because I plan to only use this during attack animations. You can just say enable rotation or disable rotation. That would probably be more accurate because it does handle the rotation overall. I'm then going to make a variable of type zombie manager, call it zombie. And on awake, I'm going to say zombie equals get component zombie manager. Again, this is on our zombie combat manager script. I'm going to say zombie.canRotate equals true on enable rotation during attack, and zombie.canRotate equals false on disable rotation during attack. I'm then going to save, minimize the game here, and let's go to our animation window again. Let's get up that lunge animation. And right where you want the zombie to be able to rotate, so for me it's at the start of the little walk he's going to do, so right before the collider is enabled. Let's do an enable rotation. And then right where you want him to not be able to rotate anymore, put the disable rotation animation event. And be careful when you do this because if you let him rotate too long, it might be too broken. He'll just trace you around in circles. And you don't want that. I mean, unless you want that as a difficulty scale. But now if I go into the game here, I'll just show you guys. I can sprint up to this gentleman. And he's going to take his little pose here. And he's going to wrap around. And there he goes. He grabs me in a corner and I'm stuck. I'm just going to run away now, and I'll just give you a clear angle so you can see again. So you can see he's turning there, and I'll give you one more just to see it again. He's going to face me. I'm going to run away. He's definitely rotating towards me. So you can tweak that with the rotation speed, and you can let him rotate for however long you want using those animation events. Now, in the next video, we're going to add normal attacks. So the zombie will just be able to scratch you and do damage, just hit you, and it won't lock the player into a grapple. It will just be a normal damage animation. And after that, we're going to implement our damage system for our character, giving our character the ability to get hurt and die. So it's some exciting stuff coming up. I will see you guys in the next one. If you made it this far, please be sure to drop a like, leave a comment. It does help appease the YouTube algorithm gods. Helps my series out a lot. And a special thank you to my patrons. Seriously, it's because of you guys I can keep doing this. And I really enjoy doing this. So I will see you guys in the next one.